the first thing I wanted to ask you guys is, for the folks who are thinking about getting into the game or just now getting into it, what tips would you give somebody just starting Digimon now, or at least considering it? Whoever wants to take the floor first, feel free.
Yeah, go ahead, Frawley. You got it.
I mean, okay, so I feel like I get this question all the time. The number one question to me is, how do I get into this game? And I do think of it as like, there's like 2 to 3 ways of doing so. Like, starter decks, I feel like, are the most obvious answer here. It's a pre-constructed deck. It's going to have rules for it in you. It's going to have exactly enough cards for you to play, a memory gauge so you can keep track of your memory, and it's just done. And most of them, they're all unique cards. It's not like they're printed in a set, beside a couple art redos from here and there. And I feel like it's just like one of the better ways of picking a color, learning what the color wheel does in this game differently from other card games, and then finding what gels for you. What's nice is they always release 2 at the same time. So I think that's the perfect way of being like, how do I get me and a friend into it? We buy 2 starter decks of different ones. We battle each other. We learn it. And then you trade, right? Like, it's not like you play the same deck the whole time. So you trade off, you get 2 people into the game. Maybe not, but you at least get someone to play with, someone to learn with. You guys can bounce the rules off each other, get to that point. And the less effective way, but like still the way I recommend those who are like more serious into like getting into the competitive side, is it's still the booster box route. Like, starter deck cards are always going to be important. I think if you want to play a deck, though, 2 to 3 booster boxes almost guarantees you most of those pieces. And if you don't get those pieces, you'll have things to give away or things to trade for those pieces if you decide on a deck ahead of time. It could be double-edged sword. It could be a great deck. It could be a problem. I'm a believer in 2 boxes per set anyways. Gets you all your commons, gets you all your uncommons, and then you can kind of go from there. And those 2 boxes kind of tell you what to build. I will say it's a little sad that you don't get enough SRs to justify maybe a whole deck. But booster boxes is like another way. So I think starter decks is easier, getting singles, and then you could booster box after that.
Yeah, I totally agree, and just kind of building off of that is the simplest way is, and it's like this with anything, right? To get into anything is just get started. Just play the game. You don't need any frills. You don't need any crazy expense. You don't need to go. We all know that there's several starter decks out there that, again, like Frawley said, super cheap, super accessible. And they do provide a pretty decent competitive advantage, but even aside from that, it's just playing the game, learning it, right? Trying to figure out, you don't need to figure out all these complex interactions and timing effects. It's just what are the basics of the game, doing something as simple as digivolving and remember to draw, or because even us as experienced players, we forget that sometimes. So just being able to get in those habits and those rhythms, and then eventually you just build off of that. It comes with experience, right? With any TCG. So that's what I've found is the best way as far as attaining cards. I mean, that just comes with time. I know when I started with 2 starter deck green decks, and now my collection is amassed to pretty much anything you can think of. But I've been playing for 2 years. So yeah, I think just getting started, and I think what that basically is premised on is just getting past the nerves. I feel like a lot of new players have that apprehension. Maybe you guys have had it, maybe not. I know I did. Is like when you're trying something new and you don't know where to start, there's that like fear factor, who am I going to play with? Who am I going to talk to? And it's like, if you can break through that, the game is so accessible, so easy to learn. And on top of that, like, there's such a good community just about anywhere to like help you, with resources and learning the game.
Yeah, and to that point with community, I think the number one thing I would say, especially like in the modern age of card games, Discords, man. Discords and YouTube and like are essential, right? Because I think when you look at a game like Digimon, it's so easy to find like online events, whether that be they're run by content creators or they're run by stores even. It's so easy. And that's what helped me get into the game. Was I was in an area at the time when I was in DC, there was nowhere to play Digimon until like literally the year I left. And I think it was like the month I left, the stores decided to start doing Digimon events. But I think really taking advantage of those online resources, and also just like watching YouTube videos or streamers who are playing the game. Sometimes just watching the game being played can be really helpful, just to kind of give you a sense of like, interactions and how people kind of interact with one another. I know that I'm doing that a lot right now with Dragon Ball Super card game, getting back into that. It's just like watching almost an overload of content just to kind of familiarize myself with either terminology or just like what is happening on the board. I will say with Digimon, the boards don't look as crazy as other games where you're like, I'm confused because I can't follow what's happening. But yeah, content creation and kind of watching those platforms, I think, is a huge benefit if you're looking to get into the game.
I honestly think you nailed two great points that like about there with like not only finding, I wrote down finding a locals because like my local community, what I love is like new players tend to get like rundown cards, like, you know what I mean? Like guys who have open boxes, they're just handing packs out to people. You get more people in, and those people end up paying it forward if you have a nice community. I love my local community. I can't stress that enough. Yeah. But with the Discord thing, you have an online locals essentially, right? Like you said, you have great content creation, which, you know, getting into a game like anything, you have free resources. Use YouTube, use websites that'll give you tournament decks. Like you use that information to the best of your advantage. But some people will break the game so down fundamentally, I feel like you start to pick it up. Like you could almost make someone watch a video sometimes and be like, hey, like here's the deck. You probably have a good idea. I think board states aren't as crazy, but like remembering all of your triggers and stuff like that can be intimidating when you have like, I have 6 triggers here and they're all going to go off. But yeah, finding a locals, whether that be online or whether that just be people to play with, that's going to encourage you to want to build decks and do fun stuff. I just started doing fun theme stuff since we were stuck on this meta for so long. So we just did a common uncommon tournament only, and we just did a common uncommon and rares tournaments only. Nice. Still following the ban list, and like I feel like that had me looking at vanilla cards that I haven't even looked at in a while. Yeah, so I think finding a local or finding a community, and you're right, like you have so much free content, you might as well watch stuff, figure out if it's for you or not, right?
And sorry, Dan, it's just before the thought leaves me, don't be afraid to net deck. And what I mean by that is don't be afraid to look up decks online, literally copy somebody else's list and play that until you're comfortable building your own thing. I've found that, like, especially for me getting back into playing card games, like, for those of y'all who know me, I used to play Yu-Gi-Oh! Way too much, and I abandoned the game completely and didn't play a card game for like 5 years. But like in certain communities, you hear a lot of people talking shit about net decking, right? I think when you're first learning the game, it's okay. Go copy paste somebody's list and go play the game. Don't worry about that. I'm literally doing that right now with Dragon Ball Super. So, yeah.
I think to your point, like in my opinion, net decking really, and it's never even a taboo subject, right? Like I understand, like deck building is an art when you get to the like the higher levels, the more elite levels of a card game, right? Because that's kind of, I mean, a major aspect of being competitive, right? Is how good of a deck constructor you can be. But yeah, at a recreational level, like at a local level, or you just trying to learn the game, or you know anything like that, you're just trying to play the game. Well, how are you going to know? Especially like I'll be the first to admit, I'm a weaker deck builder. A lot of the stuff I do is I take inspiration from other people. Sure, I have my own spins and twists on it, like most players end up having, but you're going to need a base from something, right? Because otherwise, you know, a lot of people, that's where I feel like the discouragement comes in, right? Is because, well, I'm not a good deck builder, and the thing I put together myself didn't do well, and you know, it triggers a lot of negative feelings toward a game when it's like you said, it's so simple as just net deck. You know, it's fine. You know, if anybody's going to look down on you for that, that's their issue. You know, at the end of the day, you're just trying to learn the game, and to kind of bring it all back around to you guys' original point, that's where the good community comes in. I mean, for me, again, the same as you said, I don't really have a locals either that I can just drive to and hang out with, unfortunately. But my locals has become the few Discord servers that I'm a part of, and I play with you guys. That's my locals. You know, we get together once, twice, couple times a week. We run tournaments together. Like, that's my locals. We talk decks, we talk sets, you know, in a very informal fashion. So being able to do that and finding that type of community, bounce ideas off of, I mean, that is the best, and I feel like the easiest way to just really take off a TCG career, if you will.
Yeah, 100%. I would agree with that. You know, it's, again, I think with card games nowadays, man, is different than when we were kids in like the early 2000s, late 90s, of like, what are you doing? You going to Books a Million? Y'all, I don't know if y'all remember when like Books a Million used to run tournaments, at least on the in the States, and you do Yu-Gi-Oh tournaments, and Pokemon tournaments, and there's people all around the store playing Pokemon. Like that's what you had, right? Or Toys R Us used to do that, which is crazy. And like nowadays, it's like it's so easy. I don't want to say there's no excuse to, you know, find a community depending on your game, but it's so much easier to get into a lot of these games, which I've noticed. I feel like there's been a lot more card games just coming out over the past couple years out of nowhere, and I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that it's so easy to find people to play with nowadays.